Welcome, everybody, to the Gives in the Bank Recruiting Podcast presented by BuckeyesScoop.com. I'm Marc Givler, joined as always by Bill Greene. We've got a new series here on the podcast that we're starting today. This is the Wednesday, April 21 edition of the podcast. It's been asked about on the message board. It's been discussed a lot. We are doing a national top 100 recruiting rankings list. Going to break down a little bit of kind of how we got to this point, and then what we're going to do is we're going to break these into 10 player segments. So every episode will be a group of 10 players. We'll start at 100 and we're going to count down to the number one player in the country for the 2022 recruiting class. So this first episode will be 100 through 91, but wanted to quickly kind of go over how we arrived at this. First and foremost, Bill and myself watched, of course, a lot of film, especially with, the COVID shutdowns across the country the past year. We wanted to fill as many gaps as possible with film. So we took a look at film. We obviously did our own evaluations. We've seen a lot of these guys in person at various points. Some guys as recently as last week at the Ohio Under Armour camp. But we've had a chance over the past year or so to see a lot of these guys. But the ones that we haven't, we filled the gaps with film, and we also consulted a independent national scouting service. I don't think they really want us to name them. I don't think they wanted their rankings kind of out there. So we got their list and kind of filled in some gaps if we weren't comfortable ranking a kid, just kind of get an idea what the range was. And kind of supplemented that to our film watching. So what we're trying to do here is, of course, establish an objective list of the top 100 prospects. Our goal here is to be right. We'll see how well we do with it. Obviously, these things are not an exact science, especially with the lack of in-person evaluation opportunities over the past year. But we wanted to do this. Bill, I know, you've been, really eager to get into this. As you went through this, what was maybe the hardest part for you about compiling, your own list? Because we all kind of had our little lists that we put together and bounced off each other and things like that. What were some of the challenges, I guess, for you doing a national list versus doing an Ohio list?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely different. I've done the Ohio rankings for Scout and 24/7 for years. Collaborated with Alan True on a lot of Midwest guys. Worked with Brandon Huffman on where these Ohio guys would fit nationally. But when you're only dealing with Ohio, that's a pretty narrow scope. And then to try to rank guys on a national level, I mean, man, it was pretty daunting. And to get 100, you probably watched film on 150 or 200, and I did talk to some college coaches that I know and kind of got their feel on some kids when I wasn't real sure. And, it was fun. I really enjoyed it. It was awful time consuming, but, it kind of brought me a little more respect for like Brandon Huffman and, maybe the national guys for what they have to do, because it's tough, no doubt about it. I mean, but I really enjoyed it. I know you did too. So we're excited to release the first Buckeye Scoop Top 100 and look forward to adjusting it and, updating it as we go throughout this 2022 class.
Yeah, we're going to try and settle in on kind of a schedule for how often we want to tweak this and try and find the sweet spot. I think sometimes it's maybe every 3 months, 4 months is probably about right. But we're gonna continue to kind of work on that and kind of feel things out in terms of how often we want to go back and update things. The thing that was interesting to me is these first couple lists we're going to do, because we're going to do 10 at a time, starting at 100. These were the toughest. It was not hard to put together the top 10 players in the country. That's kind of obvious. And then even once you're talking about the top 25, top 35 guys, we can debate the order of those guys, but it's usually pretty obvious who those guys are. When you start talking about, player number 83 versus player number 97, or even more so, player 83 versus player number 120.
Right.
There's really no difference there. We are splitting hairs. It's an inch of height. It's a little bit of extra size. It's maybe a tick faster. It's maybe, or for me, a lot of times it's premium position. Would I rather have the defensive end or the running back? Well, I'd rather have the defensive end.
Yeah.
But so that was the hardest part for me. Was we could have had 30 or 40 other guys at the back end of this list. And so we had to stop somewhere. We can only, we can't, it's a top 100. So you had to cut it off somewhere. So that was the hardest part for me. But, the first 20, 30 guys, that was a breeze. It was once we got down to those, 80s and 90s and stuff, I was like, oh gosh, how do you dictate, one kid from the other on some of these? But we did our best. So, and again, you can see these on BuckeyeScoop.com. We are going to post them as these episodes come out. We're going to update the list on the site. So you can go to BuckeyeScoop.com, go on the left tab. There's a rankings tab, and it'll be Scoop 100. And so if you're listening to this on Wednesday, when you go in there, it'll only show 100 to 91. So we're going to release these episodes simultaneously as we update the ranking list on the site, but you can see these online, and it may be easier actually if you're listening to this or watching this on your computer to have the list up so you can go through it yourself. But okay, well, we're going to start off again with the inaugural Scoop 100, and coming in right at 100 is a defensive end by the name of Aaron Graves out of Southeast Valley High School in Iowa. He is actually committed to the Iowa Hawkeyes. This was a guy who very recently, he is a commitment to the All-American Bowl in San Antonio. So it was a huge early pickup for Iowa. 6'5", about 260 pounds. My personal thought is that he probably is going to slide inside at the next level. That's a really big body type right now. But, maybe he stays outside. I know he's got some real good quicks. I watched the tape, good pass rusher. I'm sure there's going to be some comparisons there to some of the other guys that they've had out in the past. They've had some really good defensive ends over the years, but huge early in-state get for Iowa. Bill, any thoughts on Graves?
Yeah, almost kind of funny that, when I watched him, my thought originally was, this is a 4-3 strong side D end, or maybe a 3-4 guy. I don't know. But he reminds me of an Iowa defensive lineman, whatever that means, I mean, didn't he just look to you like, yeah, definitely Iowa, for sure. Yeah. He's an Iowa D lineman. He's a bad dude. I like a lot about him, and I think, as an Iowa kid, he probably appreciates Hawkeye football, and it just looks like a perfect fit to me watching this film. You can see, okay, Iowa D lineman. Yeah, no doubt.
An AJ Epinesa type of body type, and AJ was able to play at close to 280 and still play on the edge. So, yeah. I mean, maybe he's able to do that. So that's a huge early pickup for them. Next guy on the list, there's going to be, there's a lot of defensive guys here on this first 10 that we're releasing, but another guy who is going to stay in the Midwest to play his college football, Joshua Burnham out of Traverse City in Michigan, committed to Notre Dame over Michigan, actually not too long ago. Big time linebacker prospect. Actually a guy Ohio State offered pretty early in the process, but I don't think just really didn't get any traction with. But a guy they liked quite a bit. They haven't offered that many linebackers this cycle. So
right.
This kid was one they did. Bill, your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I really like him a lot. This one had to hurt Michigan. This was a tough one to lose, I would think, for them. I like Burnham, is he Pete Werner? How big does he get? I like the height and the length, and a good outside linebacker prospect. And again, someone out of the state of Michigan, I can't believe they like losing this guy. I mean, so I think he's got a lot of potential, and I think he's a heck of a player. The upside, is he Pete Werner? We'll find out. I think he's good. I can see why Ohio State liked him.
Yeah, and Notre Dame's actually had a really good run at linebacker the last 7-8 years. So this could be another guy that we could see. I could see him playing on Sundays in 4 years. I think, like I said, this was one of the I think so. He plays at Traverse City. It's way up north in the state.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's a rural area. If he plays at Detroit King or something like that, I think maybe a little more juice nationally in terms of the hype around him. But great player, super highly recruited, can run and hit, and that's all I'm looking for.
Right.
So, all right, next guy up, and this will be a guy that's very familiar to Ohio State fans. Kenyatta Jackson, Chaminade Madonna High School down in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale area, defensive end. Big time potential as a pass rusher, a guy Ohio State's offered. They are recruiting pretty heavily. A guy I think if they really truly make the big push this summer, I think a guy that could possibly end up in their class. I think he's definitely, I think Ohio State's definitely one of his top choices at the moment. Bill, you're very familiar with the South Florida area. What are your thoughts on Jackson?
Yeah, great program. I love the Chaminade program. I think right now I would favor Clemson for him, and I think Clemson's probably going to be the team to beat. But I agree with you. I think Ohio State can get him. You got to get him on campus at some point here, and I think they can win this one. With Larry Johnson. But if you put a gun to my head right now, I think it's going to be Clemson. I don't think Miami's got a chance. They're trying. They'd love to have him. I don't think they can get him. So I think it's really a two-horse race right now, and I think it's close. So we'll see what happens here. I think he's a heck of a player. I think they would take him in a minute and love to have him. So we'll see where things go for Kenyatta Jackson, but he's a guy I'm pretty high on.
Yeah, their defensive end board right now is kind of interesting. I know, there's a lot of momentum there. I don't know if it's to the point that they lead, but there's definitely some momentum there with like Amari Aber out of Texas.
Yeah.
And he's visiting early June, assuming all goes well with that. I mean, that could change their landscape. So they've got a few other targets there. So this could be a thing with, timing as well with Jackson. How quickly can they get him up to campus? And how are things going elsewhere, as they get some of these other guys on campus in June. So this will be one, I think we'll have a really strong idea by the middle of June, whether Ohio State is in or out on that one. But yeah, that's definitely a guy they like a lot, and is one of the top few guys on their defensive end board. So that's definitely a guy for you guys to be tracking here as things heat up in June. All right, next guy, and another guy, that's been linked to Ohio State a little bit. I personally don't see it, but he's been on the board for sure. They've recruited him, and that is offensive tackle prospect Gunnar Givens out of Virginia. Super athletic, high potential guy. May take 2 years or so to really develop. Has played some different positions at the high school level. He's just a big, almost a jumbo athlete early in his high school career. Has really just now been focusing on offensive line, maybe the last year or so. Again, there's been talk with Ohio State there. I think they've kind of drifted out of that one. But Bill, your thoughts on Givens? Do we have him too low, too high? I mean, to me, he's kind of a boomer bust guy. But what are your thoughts on Givens, and then also kind of where if Ohio State's even still a factor there?
Yeah, I love where he's ranked. I mean, I think for all the reasons you mentioned, he is a top 100 kid. Early on in the process, he was one of the names mentioned, with Ohio State recruiting. This is going back months and months, with Zach Rice. The two of them were kind of like two, and I never saw the connection between the two. I always had Rice as the far better player. And I think early on, people had Gunnar Givens as a top 40, top 50 type kid, which I don't see at all. But I think I like him where he is right here. I think he's a top 100 kid, which is, if you're a top 100 in America, you're one heck of a football player, which he is. But I don't see him as a top 35, top 40 kid. He's good. He's probably a Virginia Tech, Virginia Pitt type kid. I don't think he's looking at Ohio State, and I think they can do better than him. I agree with you, boomer bust, and I like where he is. I like him at 97. I would not like him at 47. So that's how I see Gunnar Givens.
Yeah, I mean, with guys like that, I don't know. Some people probably have the exact opposite approach I have, which is start them high and then let them drop if they don't develop. And I kind of have the opposite view on some of these offensive linemen. I'd rather start them, if they're raw, if they need to add 30, 40 pounds, if they are switching from defensive end or another position that they played and they're just realizing they're an offensive tackle, I'd rather start him at 97. And if over the next year his technique improves and he fills out and he goes and dominates at a national all-star game, or we get another evaluation of him and he dominates, then just move him up. I mean, I kind of would rather go that direction with someone like Givens. So I think we're kind of in agreement here. This was kind of a consensus on this was kind of the range he was going to be in. There wasn't really any data here to have him out of the 100 or up in the 5-star range. So that one was fairly straightforward. Coming in next, we have another defensive player, another guy that we're a little bit familiar with just because of some random Ohio connections here, but linebacker Jalen Sneed out of Hilton Head High in South Carolina. Again, and all these guys would be 4-star guys for us. You can consider pretty much every guy we're going to talk about in this episode is like a high 4-star type guy.
No doubt.
So we will have star rankings on the guys eventually, but for now, just consider everyone we're talking about a high 4-star for now. But yes, Jalen Sneed, super athletic linebacker prospect. We know BJ Payne pretty well, the head coach down there, used to coach in Ohio. Bill, what are your thoughts on Sneed? This is someone I know you were pretty adamant about having here in this top 100.
Yeah, I really like him a lot, man. 6'2", length, speed, high character kid, good academic kid, and like I say, plays for a friend of mine, BJ Payne. BJ played at Massillon and at Mount Union and coached at Lexington, a few years. So we know him well. And the thing about BJ is he doesn't overhype his kids. If he tells you he's got someone, then he's got someone. And Sneed is the guy he has. And BJ Payne has such a great relationship with Marcus Freeman dating back years that I think Notre Dame is going to get this kid. And you pair him up, with Burnham, and then you got one heck of a linebacker class. That's a heck of a start there. So I like Sneed a lot. I like everything about him. And I think he's a guy that, let's see where he progresses. He's a guy that could shoot 20 or 25 spots, I think, up into the 70s or, high 60s, because I think he's got that kind of potential. So we'll see where he goes. But, man, I think Notre Dame's got a huge advantage here in landing this kid, and he can play. So pair him and Burnham together, and you got a heck of a linebacker class.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to end up at Notre Dame as well. And the interesting thing, I kind of went back after we did these lists. I kind of looked to see, if we were outliers or anything like that. And Sneed is one that I think there's a pretty wide, there's kind of a wider range there. I think one of the sites has him in the top, even like right around the top 50-ish. And another site has him kind of lower, more towards like 200. So there's a wide range of opinions there. But I love the athleticism, and, it's funny. We talk about, BJ Payne being a straight shooter. Gosh, was he right on Poona Ford? I mean, a lot of people kind of dogged Poona Ford coming out a few years ago because he, wasn't 6'2", 6'3". He was kind of sawed off, and BJ was dead on that one. Poona's still playing in the NFL, I believe. So, definitely a guy who's developed players and has seen what a real, top level Division I prospect should look like. So I'm sure a lot of college coaches are putting a lot of stock into what he's saying about Jalen. So, all right, next up. Again, a guy who kind of from Bill's neck of the, his second home down there in South Florida, American Heritage. They've got another stud corner. It's Earl Little down there in South Florida. This program just continually churns these guys out. Bill, what do you know about Earl Little?
Oh, I like him a lot. I mean, he fits the mold with what they turn out every year down there. Like I say, this is a kid that Miami really needs, and they really want him bad, and they're fighting their butts off to get Earl Little, but I think he's going to go to LSU. Heritage and LSU, there's a great connection there between Heritage and LSU. So I like Earl Little. He's got length, great change of direction, great hips, combative guy. I mean, he's nice. I mean, he's a guy that I could see, being a high draft pick someday and coming out of that LSU program, if he does go there. I think he's pretty special and I like him.
Yeah, this is the guy you've mentioned, one or two guys you think have a chance to move up a little bit. This was maybe one of the guys when I did this list of 10 that we're going to talk about here in this episode, of all these guys, maybe he's the one that I'm like, did I not vote for him? Did I not push harder for him to, be higher? Should I have tried to move him up? I didn't, really, I guess we didn't really get into many heated debates on these particular 10 guys. I think we all had them in that, bottom half of the top 100 range. So, but I look at kind of the measurables, premium position, he's going to get developed at Heritage. Every guy that comes out of there seems to be a stud everyone that, the only guy, you look at like a Torrance Gibson is, off the field, got derailed, but like there's not a lot of guys there who are overhyped from an athletic standpoint. So it feels like he's going to be one of those guys who goes to the SEC and we see playing in the NFL in 3 or 4 years. And, that was a kind of an easy one. And a guy, I think I might not have, given his justice to. I may have to revisit that one here. We'll see how the summer and the fall go here with new evaluations. Another guy here. Now this is a guy we kind of had some gaps filled on this one. Daniel Martin from Marietta, Georgia, linebacker, again, would be a high 4-star guy for us. This is someone that everyone I talked to, as I was trying to, get some information on some guys I wasn't as comfortable with. This is a guy that everyone I talked to said, got to have this guy, somewhere in your 100. Bill, have you seen a lot of him? Kind of, what are your thoughts on him? And kind of, when you watch the film or talk to anyone about him, was there anything that, jumped out about him?
Just looks like a good, solid, consistent, football smart. Just there was a lot to like about this guy. He's not at the high end. I don't think athletically, I don't think he's a super 40-time guy, measurable guy, but I think he's just a really, really good, solid football player. And I can see why people told you got to have this guy in your top 100 because I think he's that type of player. Recruiting wide open. I know, I've seen so many schools listed for that kid from Vanderbilt to Clemson to Florida State. Didn't see much in there for Georgia. So I don't know if Georgia didn't like him or there was no connection there. But so we'll see. But I think he's a good, solid, consistent football player.
And Georgia's just rolling right now with defensive, anything in the front 7 defensively right now. They're just rolling, they get the surprise there with Jalen Walker. And, so you do wonder a little bit about that, if that impacted, what's going on there with Martin. But yeah, I mean, it's a really strong list. It is an interesting thing right now with Vanderbilt getting, quite a bit juice there. They've got a real shot there. Which obviously then, so now we're talking about high academic kid, smart kid. And then you see the film and it that shows on the field as well. But Clemson seems to really like him and Clemson certainly has evaluated that position very well over the years. So, they don't make a lot of mistakes on that position. So, it's a guy I'm personally going to try and get a little more comfortable with here moving forward. That's one of the, of the guys on this list, that was really, I think the guy I really had to ask a little bit about, but I just knew he was kind of on our bubble here. And I talked to some people and are like, no, you got to have him. So, that was that. Big Ten commit coming up. Gavin Wimsatt, 4-star quarterback, Owensboro, Kentucky, committed to Rutgers. Probably I would have to, unless I'm totally blanking on someone, this has got to be the biggest get for Schiano since he got to Rutgers. Am I over selling this?
No, I think you're right. It's an amazing get for them. And it's not like he's an in-state kid or someone close to them. for Schiano to waltz into Kentucky and get this dual threat, I mean, this is huge for them. I mean, I think he's a guy that's going to start day one for them. I mean, I really like this kid. And if this kid ended up, if he would have committed to LSU or Georgia or something, I wouldn't have been surprised at all. I mean, I think he can really play. And I think this is just an absolute steal for Schiano. Now you got to hang on to him. You know what I mean? There's always the chance that he really blows up over the next 3 or 4 months. And then what happens when one of the big timers, when Florida comes in or when somebody huge comes in and really turns up the heat, can Rutgers sign him? But if they sign him, he's going to play early. And I think he's got a chance to be really good.
Yeah. I'm still trying to figure out how they did this.
I got no idea there, but it's a great get for them.
Did the dominoes fall so early? Because when Quinn Ewers flipped to Ohio State, we saw this barrage of quarterback commitments across the country. Like Texas goes and grabs Malik Murphy, Bama goes and gets their guy. Like everyone just started going and getting their guy. Did he kind of just fall through the cracks and Rutgers just, was there the whole way? And before schools could realize that, it blew my mind. I saw him last week. He was at the Ohio Under Armour camp, and man, he looks the part. I think really good. I think, God, I hate to get into the recruiting conspiracy theories, but it is, if he committed to Alabama, would he be ranked higher than this? Would everyone have him, in the top 50 or something? If he was committed to, Alabama or Georgia, as you mentioned, you said you thought he could play at a place like that. Would the ranking, and I think a lot of people have ranked him pretty highly, right? I mean, I don't think we're an outlier here. I think a lot of people have him as a borderline top 100 guy. So I don't think we're off the mark in either direction on this, but you do wonder, if the commitment to, it's kind of a Rutgers Kentucky battle. If that was a Clemson and Georgia battle, would we be talking about him differently? But that's as big as that's the equivalent of, for Rutgers, that's like landing the number one player in the country.
I mean, it's huge. I mean, if I had told you, hey, Gavin Wimsatt committed to the Big Ten, and you'd have been like, Penn State, Michigan, no, Rutgers. You'd be like, what? Not Wisconsin, not Iowa, Purdue. I mean, he could play at any school in the Big Ten. I mean, he can play anywhere. I mean, I think this kid's really, really good. So we'll see. I mean, for Rutgers, they'll worry every night. Who called our guy today?
Right.
Who texted him today? Who emailed him today? So I mean, you'll lose sleep over this one until you get the facts. But right now, for Rutgers, hey, hats off, man. Great commit there.
I think Schiano right now is probably calling every quarterback that's committed to a top 25 program around the country and selling those kids on sticking with their commitments.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because this is if someone big time loses a quarterback commit, that kid might be the first call that happens, So Schiano's probably out there, telling, Malik Murphy, you stay right there in Austin. It's a great spot for you,
I mean, and Kentucky does really well in state.
Yeah,
they beat Ohio State
just
on in-state Kentucky kids. I mean, So how does Kentucky lose an in-state kid who's a stud to Rutgers? They didn't lose him to Penn State. They didn't lose him to Texas. They lost him to Rutgers, which Vince Marrow probably hasn't slept an hour since that commitment was made, and I'm sure the big dog's not taking that one laying down. So we'll see. That's going to be a fun one to watch. If you want to watch recruitment outside of Ohio State, if you like national recruiting, man, keep an eye on that kid and see if he visits or just any scuttlebutt you can get on Gavin Wimsatt. It will really be fun to watch because I know I'm going to watch that one.
Yep. And I apologize, guys. I should have been listing the numbers on this. I mean, I know I kind of gave you guys that, we're doing 100 through 91 range, but I should really start numbering these guys. So we are up to number 92 now. Yes, we're shifting a little bit now to some offensive skill. We just had our first quarterback of the list. Now's our first wide receiver on the list. It's Tyler Morris, Bolingbrook, Illinois, committed to Michigan. Sorry, everyone watching. Yes, we do have we do have a couple Michigan guys on this list, I believe. So, but that's a guy who really athletic kid. Really the kind of guys they need to start landing. You know, we talk about the difference between Ohio State and Michigan in recent history, and for me, it starts with the offensive skill. And so this is a step in the right direction for them. What do you know about Tyler Morse?
Yeah, I really like the film a lot, and I really watched him a lot. You know, at the high end, if everything goes perfectly, he works his butt off and develops and becomes, you know, is he Chris Olave? You know, we'll see. You know, I liked him. I mean, in a little bit raw, a little bit more raw than Olave, but man, I mean, I think the skill is there, and I like the speed. I like the quickness. Seems to have really good hands. So we'll see. You know, they just haven't really developed those kids. You know, they've had some wide receivers, you know, Donovan Peoples-Jones and Tariq Black and those guys. And this never became what I thought they could have became. You know, Donovan Peoples-Jones is probably better in the NFL than he was at Michigan. So we'll see. But Tyler Morris, I agree with you. This is the kind of athlete they need on that offense to open things up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it just I just think it's been night and day the difference makers Ohio State has offensively. I really think that's been the biggest difference. And, you know, certainly there's been some coaching turnover, and Ohio State's, you know, turned out some superstar assistants, and we can talk about coaching and scheme and things like that. But ultimately, I just Ohio State's offensive skill, their athletes, their, you know, ability to create explosive plays. I just think that's been really a huge difference in most games they've played the last 6 or 7 years. I really think that's been maybe Ohio State's biggest advantage. So
Yeah.
we'll see if this helps them close the gap on that. Obviously, that's a fantastic early commitment for them. We'll wrap this up with number 91, and this is definitely a guy that Ohio State fans are going to be familiar with. You know, they're in the chase right now on this one. It's Toriano Pride, cornerback out of St. Louis. Boy, I saw him. I want to say, was it last summer? I think he was at Under Armour last summer. And
in Columbus.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
And so that's the last time I saw him in person. And he was good. He was really good. And then I watched some of this, you know, he's doing a lot of 7-on-7 stuff this offseason. And I've been able to kind of get some video on that and talk to some people who have kind of been on the 7-on-7 circuit a little more than I have. And the one thing I noticed is he has really like transformed his body. Like he is an absolute beast now. He had to have put on 10 or 15 pounds of like just pure muscle since I saw him in July. I mean, just definitely looks the part. You know, big time recruiting battle right now. I know, you know, certainly, you know, the hope for Ohio State fans is they can get him on campus in June, and that they can, you know, get this thing turning in the right direction. I think Clemson right now is probably the team to beat. Alabama's in there.
You're there.
You know, Oregon's in there. This is a big time recruiting battle. Bill, your thoughts on Toriano Pride and kind of where that one stands?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I saw him last year, same time you did. We were there, and I think he was in the same group with Jair Brown. And I liked both. Didn't love either of them, but man, Pride, I agree with you. He's a different person right now. And, you know, as a St. Louis kid, he doesn't really have the pull to any of these schools, you know, Bama, Clemson, Ohio State. So we'll see. I agree with you. I think Clemson is kind of in the driver's seat right now. I wouldn't say driver's seat. I think they have the lead. They're ahead right now, but I think it's something, you know, if you're talking Kerry Combs, then that gets my attention from a recruiting standpoint. You know, that guy has proven that he can pull people. He can do the impossible. So, and this is not impossible by any means. So I could see Toriano Pride being in the Ohio State class. I think he could call Ohio State today, and I think they would take his commitment and break out the champagne. So, you know, definitely one to watch. Of this group here, 91 to 100, and in terms of Ohio State, this is the guy I would watch going forward, just to see how things progress, where he visits.
Yep. Yeah, I think again, yeah, let's watch these visits in June. It's gonna it's going to come down to, it always does for a lot of these kids, comes down to the visits, but with them not being able to really do anything the last year, I just think these visits are going to be weighted even more heavily into these decisions than normal. I just think we could see kids that, you think maybe a school's running third, they have a great visit, and boom, by the end of June, he's committed there. It just,
Right.
I think we could see a lot of that in June around the country. And, whether Ohio State could benefit from that, they may be hurt by it. I mean, we'll see. But I think we're in a situation now where I think in the past, it's like, okay, there's 5 official visits, but really it's a 2-school race. And whichever one of those 2 schools does the best on the visit is going to get them. I think this is a weird thing with the lack of visits the last year and a half, where really any of those 5 official visitors that these kids, these official visits these kids take, I think really just about anybody could win these battles, because there's just hasn't been this over, there haven't been like 20 visits, in the last year. They've really haven't had a chance to look at these schools. So everyone kind of gets a clean slate, in my opinion. So it'll be interesting to see. I think Pride's one of those kids, where just about anything could happen on the visits. So, all right, well, that's going to wrap it up for this one. I think this one had some Ohio State guys to watch for sure, but I think the next 1 or 2 that I've looked at, I think we're going to have even more stuff regarding Ohio State, and obviously the whole way through up into the top 10, there's going to be things for Ohio State fans to want to look at. Obviously, they're recruiting at such a high level right now, so. But just want to get these first 10 out. We'll keep these rolling out, every day, every other day. Just kind of keep updating it with the new 10, and we'll talk about it, and we'll update the list on the site, and you guys can kind of follow along and yell at us and tell us how bad the lists are. I know that I'm excited about that. It's one thing to get kind of yelled at about the Ohio rankings, but now we get to really get it. Like, there's going to be like some Alabama fan is going to come onto this and just ream us over some kid that, we didn't leave, or we left off the 100, or it should be a 5-star. So I'm looking forward to taking all of the abuse that comes with doing a national rankings list. So,
hey, if you're going to put your name out there on something, you got to have thick skin. You got to be willing to take it. And, hey, that's what this is all about. I'm looking forward to the feedback, and you got to be willing. If you're going to be in the arena, you got to be willing to fight the fight. You take the arrows and the slings that come with it. So it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. Well, we appreciate everyone listening or watching on YouTube. Again, we'll link the list. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll link the list in the description box, so you can go see the list in real time, so that you're not just hearing it for 5 seconds. You can actually kind of go look and put things together and see where things stack up. So I appreciate everyone listening, and we will see you probably right again tomorrow. We're going to keep pumping these out probably every day.